Hello. I'm here to tell you a story. Two stories, actually, about the coin. And every coin has two sides. You have still, I assume at least some of you still have real coins in your pockets, so you might figure. And the first story actually starts with the fact that I love history. I love reading history books. And one thing that jumps out once you've read the human history is that we are one innovative bunch. Think like 9,000 years ago when people started to live here. How did they live? They had basically nothing. Then they started to domesticate horse. You know, imagine this idea, this animal roaming somewhere, and this stupid idea of jumping onto it and starting to ride. Heresy. But some people did it. Inventing the wheel, inventing the train, etc., etc. And now we are here today discussing robots, Internet of Things, blockchains, etc., etc. But you are not more than 10% of the human society out there. Take an experiment. Go out like 500 meters outside of this venue and ask people how much they would know about the blockchain. The best, you would get a very awkward stare. And of course, you might actually dump onto somebody that says, oh, I've heard about the cryptocurrency. But more likely, I would say no. Actually, it will be very important which direction do you take. If that direction, then probably somebody will know. If that direction, nah. So, that is a human dual nature. We love to innovate, and yet we're so scared of it. Who knows Ned Ludd? You should. That is a guy from England, from early 18th century, and he was an apprentice who knew or was learning to make a wool cloth. And then this big shift happened. You can do it easier with a machinery. Damn. He spent years to learn it himself, and suddenly he's no future. What he did? He created, or based on his inspiration, there was a Luddite movement. Go smash machines. Because they undermine your potential future. A bit fast forward, I think we all love trains, don't we? They're actually more ecologically friendly than the airplanes. But was it the same way back in the late 19th century? Actually, there were a few cases where the UK press wrote that riding the train creates Great Depression and softens the brain tissue. Also, actually, New England's health magazine wrote that women, if they take train, become infertile. Health magazine. Think of the introduction of a first vaccine. And the idea, for those who don't know, was actually it was taking the cow's resistance from a smallpox and then kind of vaccinated the humans. So the reaction was humans will create a cow-like behavior. So now it's like a joke. It's fun, how awkward, etc., etc. But fast forward, 5G. 5G, you know, horrible. These beans, hats, tinfoil, etc., etc. But one thing that we have to understand, we should not be surprised. Every big shift creates a scare and a backlash. It is not something that is like if or iffy. It is a given thing. The other part of that story, obviously, is that if that's not iffy, actually people can use it. And if we look at the 5G and all this noise that has been created, there are all different actors that use it. There are the ones that are really scared. And like, you know, and the reason they're scared is they don't understand. They didn't really pay attention in their class of physics or mathematics, so there's no way to reference back to it. So for them, it's magic. And some people love magic, some people are afraid of magic. Like 300 years ago, in this place, they still were burning women for supposedly being witches. So luckily, they don't burn the 5G developers or blockchain developers anymore. But, you know, the mindset is still there. But if you have that, then somebody has this idea, oh, there is an emotion. I can make money out of it. I can like start rolling out stories and make people click and monetize that. 5G is going to be essential for the capability of the society in the future. If you're facing a peer competitor, I say, oh, you're trying to be ahead of me. No way. I'll not allow you. I'll drag you backwards. I'll create stories that will sip in the human psyche and make them scared. So what I'm trying to tell you is that is not optional. When the big shifts are happening, people will be scared. You have to factor it in. Second, you have to understand and relate. There are some fears, like many people are death scared of bots. When you're excitedly talking about the autonomous driving, there will be a bunch of big truck drivers that would not share your point of view at all, because they see how their profession goes away. They see how they might not be able to support their family. And these are not the kinds of people that kind of are easy to adapt. They are ready for change all the time. So there have to be, when the big shift comes, there are responsibilities within the society also to adapt, so that the ones that feel left out, they can understand how they can once again fit in. If that will not happen, the ones that promise change might suffer. And this idea that we've grown with this, that the technological development is constant, that's once again one thing that history tells you. You shouldn't count on that. It can go backwards. And that's where these kind of social shifts have not gone together with innovation. Let me now turn to other coin or other story, now of a technology. Data. How many of you that are thinking or having products do not use data? Everybody. No, that's the trick. You know the audience, they're not going to respond, so you frame the question the way you want to get the answer. But anyway, I suspect some of you. And data is great, like big data, what it offers a big insights. If you're able to use and compute on that, it creates so many different things like medical healthcare upgrades, public service upgrades, experience upgrades. All that is true. And that is one side of a coin. But what is data? Data is information. And we know information is power. And the thing that corrupts people most is power. And that's, I think, an interesting thought when you think about all of that goes into that data, is that it is also information about every human being. And when I look at some of the data that can be collected about every single human in this room, if I care to do so, I would most likely know about you more than you do yourself, and certainly more than your better half if you have one. And one would argue, so what? But then, have you heard this Cambridge Analytica thing? It's a long time ago, 2016. But still, this idea of using big data combined with psychographics to change the voters' behavior during elections. We, about 1.5 years ago, actually asked the question, is it hype? Is it real? Is it bullshit? So what we did, we ran an experiment during military exercise where we asked ourselves a question. We were asked to give an answer. Is it really that within a military exercise, one can, based on big data, affect soldiers' behaviors? So we went in, we had no physical relationship to the place, etc. That was like on our side, the exercise. But the whole idea was, we scraped the open source data, no hacking, no looking into smartphones, unless this is wide openly available. And then based on that data, we tried to actually influence soldiers. How do you think we did? We didn't very well. We made soldiers disobey orders. We made them leave the positions that were supposed to defend, actually do the things that are utterly different from their best interest. And that's where you see the power. The power of data that gives so much in-depth views of who you are, how do you behave, what are your patterns of behavior, what are your motivational dynamics, and what you're going to fall for, what you're going to believe in. And then use some good cognitive sciences and make the effect. And that is, I think, also the other side of a coin, is technology can be tremendously good, but technology can be also used for tremendously bad things. Think of the world where the human free will is up for grabs. That's actually one of the premises we have to really adjust to, is we've built our societies on the assumption free will is given, we all have it, and then we exercise in different ways. I would argue we're closing into the point where technologies can actually, to a significant scale right now, and potentially to the full scale in the future, manipulate free will. How do you run the society? How do you run elections? And that brings me to another thing. Saint-Exupéry, in his Little Prince, said, "You are responsible forever for the ones you've tamed." I would rephrase it. You're responsible forever for the things that you've created. And that is one of the things that I want to put in front of you. The idea of technology changing the world is good. And many people strive for it for very good reasons. They create, they push, they scale, and suddenly they succeed. But then, once they succeed, when the system becomes important, like Facebook, Instagram, many other like social network services, they become so important to other aspects of life that people think of how they can use these platforms for their own benefit. And then when you have not paid your attention to your responsibility to the ones that are with you on that journey, they're going to manipulate your outcomes. By the way, on Facebook, we recently ran an experiment during the EU parliamentary elections, whether one can buy manipulation of EU commissioners' social media accounts. And, you know, and of course, social media, after all this big talk about manipulation of US election results. No, no, never ever. We've done our best with closing a lot of fake accounts, etc., etc. You know what? We bought 54,000 different effects across 4 platforms for a total worth of 300 euros. During election times, on EU commissioner posts. And only 10% gets picked up by these platforms. And that is the place where a lot of societal debate happens. If somebody can manipulate that at ease, can have an effect on the outcomes of a societal debate, let's say on 5G, blockchain, specific kind of adherence to kind of acceptance of certain product, not to mention democratic elections, that is a problem. So some people have not taken responsibility for what they've developed. Not because they're bad people, but because sometimes the revenue, scaling, competition has taken the prime seat. And I can understand that, but at some point, you're going to be responsible. And I'm just saying one interesting, to me, amazing technology, like the smart house. How many of you have this Alexa at house? You few brave people. No, I know a lot of my American friends, they start their day with, start my day, Alexa, and, lights go up, and the coffee starts to boil, and, Alexa starts to read the news. But I always wonder, how much responsibility have the developers taken for the thing they've created? Because if they haven't, think that you are living your life in a New York Times Square with all glass walls around you, and everybody who cares can look into it. Everybody who cares can actually probably decide what are the news you're going to hear. So my point here today is be responsible. I'm not saying that you have to factor in, because you don't know whether the product you're developing is going to be successful in the end. But you have to understand if it is. And if it is really making a difference, you have to be responsible. Because if not, technology might be actually also ruining the system within which you, as a group, as an ecosystem, can thrive. It can work all different sorts of ways. So what I'm saying, think about the things you create. Take responsibility and understand also the way others would relate to this technology. Not all people are like you. Actually, most people are not like you. So you have to understand, and you have to take them with you on the journey. And that's what I think is one part of the mission of the kind of wider audiences. Going alone on a moon is not going to make you survive on the moon. You have to take all the planet with you. And the same with the technology. If you go alone, you're not going to survive. Take everybody. And make sure that everybody can fit into that future. If not, that will cost a big price. So I've told these 2 stories about the 2 sides of a coin. And as you might realize at this time, it is actually not about the coins, it's about a human being. How we are, what we are. And although most of the talk here, and many of the conferences I've been of this type, is about the technology, one should not forget that technology eventually is for a human. And we want to create a better place to live, enhance the good side of a human and technology, and prevent the bad one. With that, good luck. If you're interested more, this is our webpage. Thank you.